Termites, it's night 25. I've been gone for a little bit. Did you miss me? Because I was busy, because I had to announce all the tour dates that are going to start, and they're all on my website, and everything's on sale. And then we were adding shows, which is just wonderful. And that's just all the way through 2021. I haven't even gotten to 2022 yet. That's a whole different animal. But lots of things. So Texas, I didn't forget you. Denver, I didn't forget you. St. Louis, of all places, I didn't forget you. It's all going to be there. It's just a matter of when. Because I had to make up all those dates, that I didn't do because I was on my couch watching Netflix. That's what I was doing for a year. Do you guys feel like you did anything in a year? When people say, did you learn another language or something? No, but I did learn how to gamble on my phone. Does that count? DraftKings? So fun. MGM has one too. What are we drinking? Grit Kisser. It's from Back 40. It's right at Back 40 Beer Company, which is right outside of where? Birmingham, Alabama. Delicious, delicious. And a great can. Whoever designed it, love it. Let's get back to Lily. We're in chapter 12. It's titled The World Catches Up with Liberace in the 70s. He loses his mom and dad. Oh, no, that's too bad. The 70s were a decade of redemption for Liberace. America was undergoing convulsive changes in fashion, politics, music, films, personal relationship, and sexual attitudes. Suddenly, Liberace did not seem outrageous after all. His garish houses and cars and his regal costume evoked awe and admiration instead of scorn. Yeah, what about Studio 54 was going on then? He would have fit right in. Even his ambiguous sexuality was now accepted as part of his persona. Liberace himself added to the confusion when he appeared in San Francisco at a 1973 press conference that resulted in a headline, "I am not a homosexual." You just had to keep screaming that back then. You had to scream it at the press. He was quoted in an AP dispatch as saying just that, adding, "As I told the British court in 1959 when I won a $20,000 judgment against a London newspaper, my sexual feelings are the same as most people's. I'm against the practice of homosexuality because it offends convention and society." But he didn't say offends himself. He's saying, okay, I'm against it if you guys are going to be judgy. The only reason I ever got married is probably because I came from a family of divorce. My parents, first of all, it put me off from marriage. It was a deterrent. I'm so tired of people writing stories about me that are dishonest with cancerous with innuendo. There you go, Kathleen. The only reason they started is because I was the first in my field to dare to be a nonconformist, to wear the fancy clothes I do. Now, if I were to emerge on the scene, I would probably go unnoticed. A lot of people nowadays can wear sequins on their eyelids and nobody puts a sexual label on them. Who was doing that? Probably Elton John. And he was coming of age in the 70s and he didn't care. He continued in a more dramatic and fanciful vein. I could have given up many, many times, personally and professionally. Why, I've been pronounced dead 3 times. I've had the last rites of the church. I've been the victim of an international kidnapping attempt. Oh, mind you, I wouldn't trade my life for that of anyone else. I'm a person who was simply put on earth to bring happiness and love to people. And I get that back in abundance. It's what makes me go on living and doing my thing. At least this much was true. He wouldn't have traded his life for anyone else's. He envied no one. Well, had he really gotten a full-blown look at Elton John, might have been a little jealous of that. His outfits were, and then Americans were always just like, oh, well, they're British. Like, we don't even try to understand it. Why does that man have all that makeup on, like in the 70s? Oh, they're British. And we just accept that as an answer. Oh, okay. The San Francisco article calls Liberace great embarrassment. His many gay friends considered it a step backward at the time when closets were opening all over America. When he was first interviewed with the Carl Fleming and Ann Taylor Fleming book, The First Time, in which he detailed his loss of virginity, he spoke about the press conference. This son of a bitch says, do you feel the same way about homosexuality that you did when you fought your trial in London? I said whatever I said in the high courts of London, I meant. And if I said it then, I say it now. So he took one line out of 12 days of testimony and quoted it completely out of context without any explanation at all. For me to say something like that today would be stupid. It made me appear that I'm down on gay people. Shit, I resented it. Oh, he doesn't cuss that much. Must have been mad. In the 70s, Liberace still managed to make news, not always the kind he enjoyed. The IRS questioned whether Liberace's mink-lined jackets, gold-plated limos, and palatial houses qualified as business deductions. Oh, that's a big problem, because even Queen Stevie Nicks tried to write off her hair coloring, all that. The IRS said what? They said what John Panette says, nay, nay. You had to prove that the things you wore on stage, my dad knew the law, were things that you would not wear off stage, that they were literally just for stage, like a costume. And I remember one comedian, this guy, Michael, he only performed in pajamas, and he only wore those pajamas on stage so that he could write off his comedy outfits. Like, I can't say jeans. I don't get to write my jeans off because I wear my jeans. So, but Liberace, fuck yeah, his clothes stayed. Well, I mean, yes, he might wear them anywhere, but I'm sure he had stage outfits. I don't know about your house. He maintained that they did, since they contributed to the opulence that was his trademark. He paid $300 a month rent on the living quarters of the Harold Way house, which cost $50,000 a year to maintain. The house was owned by International Artists Limited, of which he held 78% of the stock. Ooh. The IRS was underpersuaded, and the tax court ordered Liberace to pay $60,000 in back taxes. When Liberace was promoting his cookbook, the one that I have, in 1971, he engaged in an uncharacteristic brouhaha. Who writes that as a word? Brouhaha, with a woman reporter. A Long Beach, California food editor had been invited to the Harold Way home to partake of Liberace's beef stroganoff, one of my favorite meals. The tasting over, the woman wanted her photographer to shoot Liberace in the kitchen. He shook his head. Too messy. He said he agreed to pose elsewhere with cookbook in hand. Too commercial, she snapped. Then I think we should forget the photo, he decreed. Then I think we should forget the story, she countered, because you're a better piano player than you are a cook. Your beef stroganoff tastes more like canned beef stew. Oh my God. Why is that necessary? Why are people such dicks? Like, he made you beef stroganoff. That was nice. If you don't like it, just eat the noodles. That's all you got to do. She was asked to leave. And the thing was duly reported in the press. The Liberace jewels proved a target for thieves. Several times he reported expensive items missing from his hotel suites. The caretaker of Harold House Way once scared a burglar away in the living room. In 1975, he reported a theft of a $28,000 necklace that had been given to him after his engagement in Lake Tahoe. Well, God damn it, nobody's ever given me a necklace after a show in Tahoe. Who did that? Who gave him that? Who gave him a $28,000 necklace? It contained 5 miniature gold pianos studded with jewels and a Rolls Royce with diamond headlights. Oh, the necklace had been stolen while he was staying overnight at the $100,000 Bel Air home of his houseboy, Gregory Scortenu. What Liberace was doing there and how a houseboy could afford such a house were questions reporters did not raise. Liberace never fretted over the loss of his treasures. Whenever I'm robbed, the jewelry eventually shows up. The pieces are easily identified. Nobody has jewelry like mine. Liberace, an autobiography, was published in 1973 by Putnam. Well, he's just moving right along. It was written by Carol. Who, really? A well-known writer the person's name is Carol? Wow. A well-known writer of radio variety shows who received only credit for his editorial assistance in the preparation of the manuscript. The book is chatty, digressive, and disorganized, as revealing in it what it omits as what it includes. On the first page of the intro, Liberace told how the magic of believing changed his life and the true meaning of Franklin Roosevelt's words. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. The autobiography disclosed nothing about his sex life beyond a mention of teenage experiences in Wisconsin roadhouses. In the final chapter, Liberace discusses romance with the girl next door, Joanne Rio. That's the one she sued him for. With heiress Frances Goodrich and Sonia Henney, the figure skater. Admitting as a longtime bachelor he might be considered a poor prospect as a husband, he added, should the right woman come along, one who clearly loves me enough to take a chance on me and feel that I deeply love her, I'm sure we both will know that this is it. He devoted almost 50 of the book's 316 pages to 12 days of his life, the London trial that vindicated him against the Daily Mirror's insinuations of his homosexuality. Wait a second. His dad. So Sam Liberace had grown old. That's his dad. He and his second wife, Zona, had moved to San Francisco in 1961, and she died in 1970. Sam's health deteriorated, and each time Lee visited his father, he was shocked by the change. Sam had reached his mid-80s, wow, and his body had withered to a small replica of the vigorous father Lee once knew. When it appeared Sam could no longer care for himself, George stepped in with a solution. George had finally abandoned his lifetime of traveling and had settled on his fifth, and he had settled with his fifth wife, Dora. What? Oh, George. Yeah, okay. George has a fifth wife, his brother, in Sacramento, where he played occasional dates and conducted a TV program. He moved his father to a nursing home near Carmichael, near Sacramento. A home in Carmichael, near Sacramento. George and Dora could watch him and be close enough for Lee and Angie to visit. Lee, you must come up and see Dad. I don't know if I can, George. The last time I saw him, I was depressed for days. He's your father, Lee. You got to visit him. When Lee arrived at his father's nursing home, he was shocked. He could scarcely recognize the tiny figure with the lifeless eyes. Dad, it's Walter. It's Walter. Come to visit you, George said. The head rose slowly. The eyes stared blankly at the visitor beside the bed. It's me, Walter, Lee said. The old man shook his head and turned to George. That's not Walter. Of course it is, George insisted. Look at those rings. Who else but Walter would wear those rings? The old man stared again. That's not my son. I'd know who my son was, wouldn't I? That's not him. Oh, God. Lee felt the tears flowing, and he fled the room. On the drive back to the airport, he said, George, you must promise me that you will never persuade me to visit him again. I don't want to remember him this way. It tears my heart out. Well, he died April 30th, 1977. The victim of his years, which were 92. Boom! That's that ain't a bad, there's 2 pages about him just buying houses that got me completely confused. So we're just going to move on past that. The renewal of brotherly bonds, because now he's friends with George again, was great comfort to Mom, now spending the remainder of her days in Vegas. Well, who doesn't want to spend their last days in Vegas? They thought she would die in 1978. She had a heart seizure at her Palm Springs house, and the doctor said the prognosis was poor. Angie joined Lee at Eisenhower Hospital, and together they watched for hopeful signs of recovery, but Mom did not respond to treatment, and Angie began to despair. Lee, I think we have to talk about what happens if Mom died. He stared at her coldly and walked away. Later that evening, Angie said to her brother, Lee, I know it's painful for both of us, but we've got to plan for the future. Now, I've bought her a lovely black dress. Lee glared at her with anger she hadn't seen since they were children. Angie, I hope you can wear that goddamn dress, because she's going to outlive us all. Mom recovered. Boom, Liberace's right. She surprised everybody except Lee by shrugging off all her ailments. Lee realized she was lonely in Palm Springs. She wanted to spend more time with her children, and all 3 were living much of the time in Las Vegas. She was thrilled when Lee said he would move her to a condominium in Las Vegas, so she gets to really live there, not just visit. She thrived in Nevada. She never missed a chance to attend Lee's show. If she wants to go to the show, she wants to go to the buffet. The buffets are really good now. I don't know if they were back in the day, but the food's actually good. You know, maybe she wanted to go see a show other than his. Mom even made friends with Gladys Lucky, Lee's longtime housekeeper, who had been resented by Mom in earlier years. Now Mom and Gladys made regular forays into the casino to play the shot machines hour after hour. Well, great. After Mom broke her hip in a fall, she could no longer make trips to the casinos. Oh, no. The Las Vegas Hilton sent several slot machines to Liberace's house for her to play. Bam! When she hit a jackpot, she demanded that he pay her. One day she said to Lee, "You know what would really make me happy again? I'd like to be able to walk again with my dear sister and my brothers. All of them, however, were dead." Well, can't make every dream come true, can you? Mom died in her sleep on November 25th, 1980, at the age of 89. That's pretty dang good, I think. Moving on, Termites. We're almost to the end of this book, isn't that? Because I think we know the sad ending part. I'll read most of it, but it's so sad, right? We are now going to the way you counteract negative is with positive. Liberace was a show business loner. He was universally liked by his acquaintances in the entertainment world, but none knew him intimately. He greeted them cordially in the dressing room after a performance. He paid calls on other performances in Las Vegas. Occasionally, he'd cook dinner for his favorites, Debbie Reynolds, Michael Jackson. Really? But like Rock Hudson and other homosexual stars, Liberace's private life remained secluded and privacy was respected. Since he did not identify with any charities or show world clubs, he was not the subject of tributes that are endemic with any star who had remained in the spotlight for decades. That exception came on November 21st, 1980, when he was presented with an achievement award by the Pacific Pioneer Broadcasters, a group of radio and TV old-timers who'd gathered at the Sportsman's Lodge. Oh my God, if you are ever in the Valley in Los Angeles, there is this place called the Sportsman's Lodge. And I loved it because it looked like something you would find, I don't even know, off the side of the road years ago in Colorado, like a hunting lodge. I loved to go drinking there, though, because it was dark and it didn't feel like L.A. It felt like I was somewhere else. Because I don't really like L.A. anyway. Anything that would make me feel like I wasn't in L.A. made me happy. They gathered at the Sportsman's Lodge in Studio City periodically to reminisce about their glory days. So they're giving him a big award, and I think I had skipped a page here. Lee was genuinely moved by the tributes. He gazed around the room and old friends like Maxine Lewis, Vivian Blaine, and David Goldstone. He recounted old familiar stories about Walter Buster Keyes and getting his job at the Last Frontier and mistaking Howard Hughes for the electrician and his last rites in Pittsburgh. The stories have been so polished for interviews over the years that they sounded like a nightclub routine with all the punchlines in the right places. Then he came to the chambermaid on the toilet number, which had the most surefire monologue of his act, the climax evoking laughter every time. He tells the story, but we already know the story. When Liberace was in Palm Springs, after he'd moved Mom to Vegas, Liberace decided to sell the Spanish hacienda where she lived behind the cloisters. The buyers were Vince Fonza and Kevin Fossler, who operated a gift shop in Palm Springs. A few years younger than Lee, they became friends as well as neighbors. Lee enjoyed talking to people who were not impressed with show business, and he had a special designation for Franza and Fossler. You know, I have a personal manager and a personal valet. Vince and Kevin are my personal neighbors. Oh, I never thought that you could claim that. Like, could I just say my neighbors, Jeff and Debbie, those are my personal neighbors. When Liberace was in Palm Springs, he often dined with two neighbors. Fossler was also a gourmet cook, and he and Lee spent hours together in the kitchen preparing feast. When Fossler and Franza decided to build a garage, Lee said, "Make it larger so I can get two of my cars in it. Then I won't have to go to the street to get my car." A doorway was cut through the back wall of the cloisters, and Franza dubbed it the hole in the wall. Whenever Lee came to visit, he telephoned, "I'm coming through the hole in the wall." Ha ha ha. He came often, though, never when he saw a visitor's car in front of the house. He was shy about encountering strangers. After Mom died, Lee seemed to find solace in the house. One Christmas, he asked if he and Angie could come visit. After conversations over cocktails, Lee asked, "Would you mind if Angie and I went to Mom's bedroom?" They remained behind the closed door for several minutes, and they returned red-eyed from weeping. Oh, sad. Well, let's stop here, Termites. This is going to get sad, though. You know, put on your sad pants. Nothing wrong with sadness. makes happiness happier, right? What if you were happy all the time? You wouldn't even know it. All right, termites, I hope you're all doing good. We're going to, we only have a couple of these left. But then I have to go on the road and come see you in person. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And the podcast, I'm working very hard on the podcast. I'm going to try to keep that going too. And I'm going to make a t-shirt that says, do you have any ranch? And then it's going to say the podcast on there too. But I haven't done that yet either. Why? Because it's May and June and the fishing is good. That's the truth. There's some big ass bass waiting on me down there. And I need to beat my neighbor down there. So, you're worthy termites. You're loyal termites. You're deserving termites. Hope you've been vaccinated if that's what you would like for yourself. Judgy? Maybe. Anyway, night-night termites.